Robin, great to see you again.
Spencer, absolute pleasure.
I've had the pleasure of interviewing you before for a previous show. And at the end of that, I remember saying to you that I wish we could have spoken for longer. I took away so much from that conversation, and I'm delighted to get to chat to you again. I think today it would be really interesting to dive into discipline, process, consistency, things that you are an expert on. I've had my ups and downs with those things in the past and feel like I've made really positive change to my life, but it doesn't come without complication. And I thought, I'm sat here with no notes, knowing how eloquent you are and what a great mind you have. And I was hoping we could just talk and hash out some of the good stuff.
I'd love to. Sounds like a great plan.
Can you try and define what discipline is?
I think in so many ways, Spencer, discipline is about consistency. And consistency is about keeping your promises. Not only the promises you make to other people, but the promises you make to yourself. And I think when we make a promise to ourselves to get up at 5 a.m. to work out, to train for a marathon, to write a book, to be a better family person, following through on that promise is actually a gift we give ourselves. Because when we start to follow through on promises, we grow in credibility. And when we grow in personal credibility, we grow in self-respect. And when we start to respect ourselves more, we start to love ourselves more. So I would say discipline begins with following through on the commitments you make to yourself. I'd also say what you do every day is so much more important than what you do once a year. So one of my favorite brain tattoos, I shared it with you last time, but small daily, seemingly insignificant improvements, when done consistently over time, leads to stunning results. So your days are your life in miniature. If you can be consistent and disciplined each day through micro wins, you'll build the muscle of self-regulation or discipline so you can get stronger and stronger and stronger.
Do you think a micro win is getting up earlier, reading a book, taking a cold shower, going for a run? Like, what do you mean by a micro win?
Exactly, just a tiny triumph. We think a great company requires revolution, but it's built through evolution, little optimizations. And I really believe a great human life doesn't require some revolutionary decision made on a sunny Friday morning. It's those little micro victories. It's those little tiny triumphs that are so simple to do, they're easy not to do. But when we take those steps forward, they do stack into a tsunami of results that we can't imagine when we look back at them.
What are examples of things that say people who have a lack of confidence or low self-worth could implement? And I personally find that this, in my case, revolves around self-worth. So when I train and don't drink alcohol and push myself physically and behave in ways that I think are admirable, I respect myself more. I have a greater sense of self-worth. You're proud of yourself, if you will. But do you have any advice for people who might feel a bit stuck in the mud? Perhaps they don't love their job, maybe they're not happy in their relationship, and they wake up every day feeling, and I've been here before many times, where you wake up feeling, how can I do more with my life, and why do I feel this way?
I'd say a few things. I'd say the smallest of actions is always better than the noblest of intentions. So how do you build, you focused in on one of the greatest reasons we don't exercise discipline. And it's not because of the external excuses. I'm too busy right now. The kids are young. There's a lot of change in the world right now. There's going to be a better time in the future. I think often we make excuses because deep inside subconsciously, we don't feel worthy of the winning and the changes that we know we need to make. The second thing I'd say is it's much easier to act your way into a new way of thinking. It's a key psychological principle. It's much easier to act yourself into a new way of thinking than think your way into a new way of behaving. So when you start acting and taking those little micro wins, you start to build a stack of evidence that you are the person you want to be. Because another psychological point is our daily behaviors reflect our deepest beliefs. And so if we're not taking the behaviors that we want, we have a belief system of unworthiness. We have a belief system that you're not good enough. We have a belief system that the great athletes, the great marathoners, the great artists, the great leaders are somehow cut from a different cloth. And that's just not true. If you over the past 30 plus years, I've mentored billionaires. I've worked with many sports superstars. I've worked with entertainment royalty. And these people are ordinary people who installed different habits through small little practice over time that got them to an amazing place. So I think the best thing we can do is start small, do something today, and start creating the momentum and the consistency around those little habits. Let's go to the science of University College of London. And University College London said it takes 66 days to install a new habit to the point of automaticity. And automaticity is simply a place that anyone can arrive at where it becomes easier to do the new skill that we want to exercise the discipline to install. Automaticity, we get to the new skill, it becomes easier to do the new habit than not to do the new habit.
In 66 days?
Roughly 66 days. But what do most of us do? We try joining the 5 a.m. club. We try learning Italian. We try training for a marathon. We try being a better listener. We try saving more money for a week, and it's hard. And so we stop and say to ourselves, I guess I'm not the kind of person who could run a marathon or be a great athlete or be a great artist. We just don't stay with the change program long enough to create a neurobiology where the new habit is installed. And I should also say, every one of your listeners from around the world has a gift. And the gift is neuroplasticity. And as you know very well, Spencer, neuroplasticity is simply a feature of the human brain that allows it to adapt to new experiences and environments. So anyone who says, well, I can't do this is actually betraying what the science says. We have an ability of the human brain to adapt and change and install new skills to the point of mastery if we practice long enough. But most of us give up a little bit too early.
What's the opposite of what you just said? So in order to build a new habit for it to become easy, takes roughly 66 days. How long does it take to get rid of a bad habit to the point where it's easy to never do it again? I was told that it takes about 6 months. So say if you have problems with addiction or alcohol, if you're able to abstain from that behavior that is toxic and complicating your life, or in some cases worse, if you're able to abstain from that style of behavior for 6 months, then in theory, you can abstain for the rest of your life. It's obviously not that simple, but it's interesting to understand the 6 month to 6 week difference. So it's actually less time consuming and easier to become, to incorporate better habits into your life than it is to give up difficult habits, which I think is a really interesting point in itself. So you may as well pick up, the better habits if you can. You may as well push yourself to try and be better. If you were worried about time sensitivity of change, then that becomes an interesting point, I think.
I agree with you. I hear you. I would also say that all change is hard at first, messy in the middle, and gorgeous at the end. So human beings and our culture today has a fascination with easy. Let's have the easy conversations. Let's take the easy project at work. Let's install the easy habits. But I actually believe, first of all, leadership, which I spent a lot of my life in the leadership world. Leadership is the consistent doing of difficult things. And I also believe that hard is easy and easy is hard. And I think this will really speak to you, Spencer, but when you do hard things, you'll end up with an easy life. When you do the hard workouts, you end up with very good health. When you have the difficult conversation in your intimate relationship or with a work colleague, you actually have an easier relationship. When you read hard books, you have an easier way of thinking. And I actually think easy is hard. If you look for the easy crowd, you install easy habits, you look for easy ways to live, you'll end up having a hard life. So I wonder, what is this fascination that so many of us have with the path of least resistance?
I think comfort feels nice to people,
Yeah,
doesn't
it
it?
does.
So that's the problem. It's difficult and this is something that I have understood in recent years, that doing hard things is rewarding, and that I mean mostly from a physical sense. I don't have any kind of deep psychological knowledge. I only have what I can speak to. But my life has changed a lot by tackling difficult physical feats. They're very rewarding, and the time that you spend preparing for them is what you're talking about, is consistent effort in order to achieve the goal. And it makes you feel really proud of yourself, and it makes you feel like a better person, I suppose, in my case. Would you advise that somebody tries to do something difficult every day?
Yeah, I think it's important to exercise micro bravery, doing something difficult each and every day. And you speak to another key point, which is, I don't think it's only the success that is the reason for the discipline. In other words, okay, I did the marathon, I climbed the mountain, I finished the book, I did the work project. I don't think that's the only victory. I think it's what the training and exercise of discipline and who you become on the way to the metaphorical mountaintop. I think that's the real gold. Because wealth in life comes in many forms. I've written this book. We talked about it last time, The Wealth Money Can't Buy. And it's based on the 8 forms of wealth model that I've been teaching for over 20 years to my clients. And our society says you're winning and you're wealthy when you have FFA, fame, fortune, and applause. But I think there are a lot of people who have a lot of money and not much else. I've mentored a lot of billionaires. They have yachts and they have jets and they have homes, and they're the most lonely, miserable people you can ever imagine. I think another form of wealth really pursuing is who you're becoming by the doing of difficult things. I think to write a book or write a screenplay or whatever the goal is that inspires us and lights us up, by going through the difficulty as well as the rewards, by going through the training and the study to get to that goal, we build intimacy with our gifts and our talents. And we get to know more of who we're meant to be. And that might sound a little philosophical. I think it's really practical. I think we come alive and we are most happy when we are getting to know more of our gifts and our talents. I think that's one of the greatest sources of wealth. It's growth and full self-expression. And that's why doing hard things is really great. You get to know more of your highest self. Consistency is the mother of mastery. It's not what you do once in a while, it's what you do every day. It's those little micro wins.
Is that also because, say you're somebody that, doesn't lift weights, doesn't go to the gym, and doesn't train just for argument's sake, right? And you suddenly start training and you find it very hard and you stick with it because, you're inspired by somebody who's helped you try to make positive change to your life, and you want to stick with it, and you go and you start training, and all of a sudden the training becomes easier because you're doing it consistently, and your life begins to change, and you begin to maybe look at yourself differently, and you become stronger and faster, and you start to have opinions about what you might be able to achieve. How do you continuously build on that progress?
I answer that in a few ways, Spencer. I'd say being on the plateau is part of the path to mastery. And I think if you look at a great company, for example, or a great athlete or a great artist or a great human being, they have periods of extreme growth where it's almost like exponential, and then they're on the plateau for a while. And I think sometimes you have to hang out on the plateau and let things integrate before your next level. I used to ski a lot. And I remember after I have a great lesson, and then my instructor would say, get some mileage. And sometimes on the plateau is all about getting mileage and letting the training and the mentoring that you get from your teachers, letting it integrate. And then you get ready for your next period of growth. So in many ways, growth and mastery is like a series of cycles, periods of growth, periods on the plateau. And we can't make the plateau wrong. I'd say the second thing is growth is a series of deaths.
I guess it's a patience thing as well, the plateau. Like when you know you're in a plateau, and like just to make it a really simple example, imagine you're trying to run a fast 5K, right? Mm-hmm. Like, lots of people now are looking to run fast 5Ks, and you hit a certain time and you go in your head, if you're competitive and impatient like I am, it's like, right, the next time I do this, I'm going to shave off, 10 seconds or 15 seconds. And you might miss that a couple of times because, that effort that you made was huge, the first time round. And then you're fighting to knock off these seconds and you can't do it for a period. And you begin to ask yourself, like, what do I need to be doing to get faster? Because he's faster than me, she's faster than me, and how are they doing it? And kind of, I can find that I get myself in a competitive cycle with myself. And I have found it really important to compete with yourself and not other people. And I don't know what your view on that would be. I'm inspired by many people. So I look at certain athletes who are far superior to me, and I look at how they achieve certain things, and of course they're all very consistent and very disciplined, and but they also plateau as well. So it's kind of you have this strange almost paradox of kind of like, how do you get better when I'm already pushing my limit quite hard?
This is the new generation of wearable technology. I want to tell you why it matters so much to me. There was a time in my life where I needed to make some serious changes. But what I've since learned is that so many others have felt exactly the same way. Whether it's about sobriety, fitness, your career, or just finding a better path, that first step is always hard, but staying on the journey is even harder. Tools like Whoop can be incredibly powerful in ensuring that you stick on the right path. The all-new Whoop hardware is now smaller than ever, with 14 days plus of battery life, and comes with a host of powerful new features like health span, heart screener, and enhanced sleep performance insights. It's more than just a wearable. It gives you the data and guidance to stay accountable and keep moving forwards. From tracking sleep and recovery to helping you understand your body, Whoop gives you real insights that can absolutely make a difference. So if you're at that crossroads or already on your way, Whoop might just be the tool that helps you keep going. Click the link below for your first month free.
Number one, the great champions are not only interested in a little window of world class, they're in it to build a dynasty. And so the great athletes, the great ones, the legends, the icons, these people, last year's winning performance is next year's baseline starting point. So I think that's kind of how the great ones think. It's last year was great. We won the trophy. How can we make it even better this year? I would say the second thing is thinking about longevity is really important. And the key to longevity, surprisingly, for athletes or in life, is recovery. And I would actually, I had Usain Bolt's physician attend one of my live events, and he said, you know what Usain Bolt believes? He said, I rest to allow the training to take effect. And so sometimes being so driven that you're constantly in this high excellence cycle without recovery will actually slow you down. Sometimes you have to slow down to speed up, which I think brings us to the intuitive idea of seasons. Sometimes it's okay to have the deep dish pizza. Sometimes it's okay to take a week off or even a month off, because then you can come back stronger. Restriction creates obsession. If you are so tightly wound and so uber ninja-like, sometimes that restriction creates obsession where then you go on the binge or whatever. So I'm
pretty familiar with that.
Right? So I think, our society says that just consistency doesn't mean you're a machine. We're human beings. Which brings me, you hinted at another thing. What happens if we're training and we love being a marathoner and then we reach a point where we go, I want to be a yoga teacher? That's okay. The great thing about a human life is we get to create it on our own terms. And so I think, human beings are built to play. I think one of the reasons so many of us are experiencing a collective malaise is we've forgotten to play. We've forgotten our childlike parts. We've lost the sparkle in our eye. So yes, elite performance, incredibly important if it lights you up, if there's a fire in your belly. You love getting up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. training, fantastic. Does it mean you're always going to have fun? No. Muhammad Ali said, I didn't like even one of those 5 a.m. workouts, but I loved the idea of being champion of the world. But if we're not being lit up by it anymore, why should we feel obligated to continue doing it?
Tell me about the benefits of waking up early.
Quietest time of the day, and the night owls will argue with me, but in India, for example, there's a philosophy called, I believe it's called Brahma Muhurta, but it's the idea that between 4 and 6 o'clock is the most still time of the day. A lot of the wise people, the sages and the monks, believe that your prayer is most powerful between 4 and 6 in the morning. Science will confirm, actually, that the brain has a mechanism that washes itself while you sleep. So you wake up early, your brain has almost washed itself of the cognitive residue from the day before. Between 4 and 6, your meditation is more powerful. Between 4 and 6, when you read an autobiography of a great leader, great athlete, or you read a holy book, it can go deeper into your spirit and into your awareness. In this age of dramatic distraction, getting up at 5 o'clock, you can actually think. And I have a methodology in the book, the 20-20-20 formula. First 20 minutes, move. We can talk about that. You know all about it. You create a pharmacy of mastery. You release dopamine, the inspirational neurotransmitter. You release serotonin, the feel-good neurochemical. You release cortisol, the fear hormone. You create BDNF when you sweat, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which actually stimulates neurogenesis, which is the formation of new brain cells, and it actually repairs brain cells damaged by stress. And when you exercise first thing in the morning, you also release norepinephrine, which makes you a more focused person. So the Spartan warriors said it so much better than I ever could, and they said, sweat more in training and you'll bleed less in war. And so rather than getting up and chase the day and be reactive, and you read the news and you feel full of stress, I encourage people, get up at 5 o'clock, give yourself an hour, I call it the victory hour, and feed yourself. You know, I talk about the 4 interior empires. Everyone talks about mindset. So many of your followers and your listeners and viewers are very familiar with the brain tattoo, mindset is everything. You know, with great respect, I don't think mindset is everything. I think mindset is your psychology, but we have 4 interior empires to work on, I believe, every morning or every day if we want to get into our true power and our strongest selves. Mindset is our psychology. Heart set is our emotionality, which is incredibly important. Move through trauma, disappointment, fear, sadness, anger, so you'll be a better performer. 3rd interior empire is health set, our physicality, and the 4th interior empire is our soul set. And so from 5 to 6 is a great time of the day to do that inner work that allows us to go out into the world and represent our highest ideals so we're better selves.
In my home in particular, it's also, I think, the only time that it's quiet.
You have you have little kids?
I have 3 kids.
Oh, there you go.
3 little kids. They sleep well though, thankfully. They go down. This will probably drive parents insane. But all three of our kids go down between 6:30 and 7, and they get up at 7.
Oh, that's amazing.
We're very lucky. It's, with the odd exception of a bit of squealing in the night from time to time from one of them, but it's pretty. We're able to get good sleep in our house, which I think is fantastic. But I remember last time we spoke, just really taking that away, that getting up early would be a great thing to do. I'm one of these people that kids themselves sometimes with being, I am pretty busy, so I'll get home sometimes it's quite late, and I'll cook myself some food or whatever, and then watch TV for an hour or an hour and a half, and then go to bed at 10 or 11. So getting up at but recently we've been going to bed earlier, really trying to make sure that we're both quite obsessive with our sleep. I wear a Whoop, so I kind of track my sleep, and I love getting 8 hours if I can. But I'm gonna do this 5-hour thing. I think it's a great idea. Great time to read a book. Have your morning. What are your views on caffeine?
Well, before, let me just have a sip of my coffee right here. So what I would say is the key to a great morning routine is an excellent pre-sleep ritual. And I like to get to bed at 10 o'clock. For years, most of my adult life, I was getting to sleep at 11. And now I've just trained myself to go to sleep at 10 o'clock. I think Not checking your phone 3 hours or even an hour before you go to sleep, doing a meditation is so important. But I think sleep is not a luxury. Sleep is a necessity. We know that one of the greatest ways to cut short your longevity is not to have good sleep. So I think that's very wise. And the 5 a.m. club is not about not getting sleep. It's about going to sleep a little earlier. Here's an idea that willpower researchers have discovered. We do the worst things later at night. And why is that? It's because of a scientific term called ego depletion. Ego depletion.
By the worst things, what do you mean? Is it bad habits like
Yes.
screen time?
Yes, exactly.
Drinking? Or do you mean
drinking? We go for the chips. We go for the snacks. We watch the most eye candy videos. We do that late at night. And here's why. It's because we wake up in the morning with a full well of willpower or discipline. And that's, again, part of getting up early. You get to do the most important things at the front end of your day. But you wake up in the morning with a full well of willpower. And as we go through the day, we're making choices and we're doing actions that start to reduce our willpower reserve or our well. So we get to the end of the day and our willpower is empty. And that's called ego depletion. And if you look at some famous people who make these silly mistakes that cause them to lose their reputation and be canceled, you go, why would someone do that? It's because all day and all week and all month they're making world-changing decisions, so their willpower well is empty, so they have no discipline to make the right choice. I believe willpower is very much like a muscle. There's a metaphor of the space shuttle. Did you know it takes the space shuttle as it leaves Earth? It uses more fuel in the 60 seconds after it leaves Earth than it does during its entire circumference around the world. And why? It's because it has to overcome the gravitational forces. And we all can make change as human beings. We do have a gift of neuroplasticity. We are strong. Everyone listening and watching is so much more powerful and stronger than they can imagine. But often we don't start. We don't take that first step.
Is that because of fear of failure?
A lot of us have low self-worth. A lot of us have a poor self-image and a poor self-identity. I mean, look at how so many of us talk to ourselves. We say, I'm not good enough. I can't find true love. I'm not the kind of person who could build a financial fortune. I'm not cut from a cloth that would allow me to win in business or win in life. We talk to ourselves in really, really negative ways. And the words we use when we talk to ourselves shape our self-identity. And what we do in the world is based on our self-identity. On top of that, I believe we're born into incredible potential, but we pick up the programming of our parents. And if our parents had limited programming, there's an acronym that I teach called the PENM principle, which is the 5 forces that shape us. P for parents. E is our environment. N, our nation that we live in shapes us. A, our associations. And M, the media. And these 5 forces start to do their work on us from the moment that we're born. And then we end up betraying ourselves and living the lives that society wants us to live versus our true lives. And that's what that old movie, The Matrix, is all about, right? You're born into genius. You're full of awe and wonder and potential. And what did Morpheus say? The world has pulled the wool over your eyes. So take the red pill or take the blue pill. If you take the red pill, Kansas is going bye-bye.
Do you believe that everybody is the same when it comes to, the neuroplastic ability to change and grow and develop themselves? Like, what happens? I mean, obviously some people are more privileged than others. People are dealt different cards at birth. People play the cards that they're dealt. Of course, you can't change who your parents are or where you're from. How do people level the playing field?
Well, the first thing I'd say with great respect is so many people want the rewards of world class without doing what world class requires. Human beings, no matter where you live, no matter who you are, no matter what your background is, we all have agency. And too many good souls, I believe, are operating as victim. They're giving away their power. They're saying, I can't exercise because of this. I can't read versus scroll because of this. I can't start a new business because of this. I can't find love because of this. The more you give away your power and practice giving away your power, the better you're going to be at giving away your power. I believe you have a choice when you wake up every day, victimhood or leadership. Victimhood is all about CBE, complaint, blame, and excuse. Leadership is all about APR, absolute personal responsibility. So are some people more privileged than others, born into a certain country where it's easier? They have easier backgrounds? Absolutely. Having said that, Spencer, you know this. In many ways, the story of success is people who come from difficult circumstances who somehow found a way to get to domain dominance in whatever field they wanted to. There are so many people who were in the most difficult of situations, and they built themselves into stronger people and created incredible lives from them. There's so many people who've been traumatized. Some people suffer their entire lives. I'm not judging, but some people just suffer their entire lives and are bitter. And there are other people who have used their pain to purify them. They've used the trauma to heal, and they've done amazing things with it. As a matter of fact, the greatest artists are the ones who've suffered the most. As a matter of fact, the greatest world leaders suffered the most. Rumi said it well, the great philosopher, keep breaking your heart over and over again until it opens up. And the last thing I'd say on that is my life changed when I stood in Nelson Mandela's prison cell a number of years ago. And what better example of, he was in prison for 27 years. He was on Robben Island for 18 years. The first few years on Robben Island, because of the color of his skin, they wouldn't let him wear trousers. Even when it was freezing, he was asked to wear shorts. They gave him terrible food. When he was an elderly man, he would shower, and the young guards would watch him shower naked, and they would laugh at him. The propaganda office would redact letters from his family, his then wife, Winnie. He said his greatest regret was he wasn't allowed out of prison to attend the funeral of his eldest son who was killed in a car accident. And yet when he was being prepared to be president of South Africa, he reached out to the prosecutor who wanted the death penalty and invited him to dinner. And he reached out to the guard who used to stand outside of his prison cell for many years, and he invited him to his inauguration as the president of South Africa. And he was asked, why would you possibly do that? And he said, if I didn't, I'd still be in prison. So human being, no matter who you are, we have the power and agency to make decisions and exercise new choices.
This is a quick message to say thanks so much for listening. And if you haven't already, please follow and subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. We're still a new podcast, and with your support, we can keep bringing you amazing conversations. If you just take a few seconds to subscribe, follow, and review us wherever you are, it really does help support the show. Thanks again for listening. Now back to the show. This is an advertisement from BetterHelp. As men, we're taught to tough it out, hide stress, push through, and never let it show. But realistically, bottling it up doesn't make it disappear. You can't kick problems down the road. You have to be proactive and take action. True strength is knowing when to ask for help, and therapy can be a great resource to gain the clarity and tools to work through life's challenges. I wouldn't be in the mental place that I am today if I didn't do the work with trained professionals, both physically and mentally. Think of your therapist as a spotter in the gym. It's not about weakness. It's about having the right support to lift heavier and lift more frequently. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/untapped. That's betterhelp.com/untapped. When you're tired, dehydrated, and struggling to concentrate, making smart decisions gets a little tough. That's why I take Vitals by Heights every single day. Initially, my team recommended it to me to keep me firing on all cylinders because it's not just about keeping my legs moving, it's about keeping my brain switched on and ideally making better life choices. Vitals are packed with 20 essential nutrients, including omega-3s for brain power, B vitamins for energy, and vitamin D3, all formulated by scientists and dietitians. And it just gives me that extra edge, better focus, sharper thinking, sustained energy, faster recovery, and deeper sleep, all in 2 capsules a day. Vitals are the smartest way to fuel your body and mind, so give it a go. Get 20% off your first month subscription at heights.com/untapped or use code UT20 at checkout.
Let's talk a bit about self-worth then and kind of confidence. We spoke about, discipline and the things that you can do to become slowly better at things which build self-worth. How does self-worth come about when you feel like you have nothing?
Self-worth comes about by doing difficult things. Self-worth comes about by building a stack of evidence that we can rely on to build that confidence. And I have a few tools that could be helpful for anyone who wants to build more self-confidence. The first thing I would say is the 60-minute student. Every night, spend an hour reading about the people whose lives you want to be living. If you don't have a live mentor in your life, find a dead board of mentors. And that's just reading books of people who inspire you, because reading a book is a conversation with the author. And I think you'd agree, having one conversation with an amazing person could send the rest of your life into a whole new orbit. So reading the books of people who you admire is a great way to start building self-confidence. Second tool is journaling, and it's called the 5-question morning maximizer. So if you want more confidence and even more productivity, better performance, answer these 5 questions every morning or 5 days a week. Number 1, what am I grateful for? So gratitude is the antidote to fear. Gratitude is the elite performer's secret weapon. Some science. Sonia Lyubomirsky, one of the most eminent positive psychologists, has found that the most productive and happy people practice deliberate gratitude. Not on Christmas or New Year's Day. Every day you celebrate your small blessings. Second question to answer, where am I winning? The human brain has a negativity bias. It served us well hundreds of years ago when we had to be hyper-vigilant on the savannah against being eaten by predators and dying of starvation. Now we're in the modern age. Most of us have more blessings than royalty had 200 years ago, but we're still scanning our environment for threats. So answering that question, where am I winning, allows you to celebrate micro progress, which fuels momentum, energy, and confidence. Third question, what will I let go of today? Forgive the unforgiven. Don't be an injustice collector. Let it go. That'll free up positivity, energy. Is that important for elite performance and discipline? Fourth question, what does my ideal day ahead look like? Most of us get up in the morning and we live out each day like a 5-alarm fire. We're reactive. We're like a leaf in the fall wind, right? It's like chasing the day.
Yeah.
So little script, be like a script writer. The great Hollywood script writers, they write the endings first. Write your ending first. Fifth question of the 5-question morning maximizer. Powerful one. This is the KDC question, Spencer. Keep death close. So you ask yourself, what needs to be said at the end, on the last hour of your last day? And that way, each morning, while the world is asleep, you connect with your mortality, so you don't become a master of trivial pursuits, but you're monomaniacally focused on the things that will matter at the end. That's a great way not to be full of regret.
You touched on breath work. I don't practice it regularly. It's something that, since coming back from holiday, I've realized that I am going to practice. The first time, and to anybody who hasn't heard us speaking about breath work, Google the Wim Hof method. I'm sure there are many others, or Tumo breathing, I think it's called. Is it Tumo or Tomo? I can never remember. There's a kind of quite aggressive breath work that you can do where it's literally like deep breaths over and over again. Repeat it 30 times. Hold your breath. Five sets of that. You will be astounded at what happens. I'm sure you practice it anyway, but the first time that I practiced Wim Hof's breathing, I literally thought in the back of my mind that it was the biggest kind of waste of time prior to doing it. That obviously this won't do anything, it's breathing. And I felt what I can only describe as a kind of electrical surge going through my body, like full on electricity moving through my veins into my fingertips. Like, I described it to a friend as a kind of Dragon Ball Z character going Super Saiyan, when their hair goes from black to blonde and they become,
Amazing.
and you have an electrical charge in you. I've never been more astounded probably by anything in my life, actually, of the effect that had on me, because it was just incredible to me that you can charge yourself, get high, whatever you want to call it, on oxygen by breathing, sat cross-legged in your living room. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to do anything. You don't have to pay for anything. And it was this just remarkable feeling of, wow, it's hard to explain. Like, I'm sure you breathe as well, but I haven't done it in a while. I'll probably do it this afternoon now that we're talking about it, because it's incredible and it's amazing. And you have this spring in your step and this feeling of like invincibility almost. It's like Bradley Cooper, who we were talking about earlier in Burn, his Limitless film. You kind of feel like you have a really kind of dynamic edge when you've done some breath work. And by the way, I think it takes 7 minutes, to 7-8 minutes to complete Wim Hof's very basic breathing exercises. The first time I ever did it, I was on an EasyJet flight. I was reading his book and I thought, well, I've got an hour and a half. I'll just do this now. And I did it on the plane. And I literally was like, I was hysterically laughing on a packed EasyJet flight because I couldn't believe the feeling I was getting. So there's a little, do it. Just Google it. If you're listening to this, when you finish the episode, Google Wim Hof breathing, give it a go. It's remarkable how it feels.
Yeah, and I'm not giving any medical advice. I'm just reminding us all, including myself, of what the ancient wise people say, which is to live properly, we must breathe properly. And I'm just reminding myself and all of us, like when we were kids, we used to breathe very deeply. We used to breathe from the belly. And now, because most of us on the planet today, in an age of polycrisis with social divisions and wars and pandemics and economic volatility, I think most of us are in a state of ambient anxiety.
Mm. James Nestor wrote a wonderful book called Breath, and it's definitely worth a read. It's one of the better books I've read, actually, and I found it just fascinating to understand the difference. He goes so far as to, he tapes his nose and only mouth breathes for a while and sees the effect it has on his health and his mind, and it's incredibly detrimental to his health, right? So if you could only nose breathe, you will be a far healthier person. Obviously, that's not possible. People breathe through their mouth, but he does all these tests and experiments and takes you through just the importance of breathing properly. To breathe perfectly, you would breathe, I think it's something like only 6 full breaths in a minute. And we breathe, your average, I breathe about 14 in a minute. And when I'm asleep, I think, well, that's what my Whoop tells me anyway, that I breathe 14 deep breaths in a minute. But in order to breathe perfectly, you would actually make the effort to slow down your breathing and breathe more from your gut, and kind of it's transformative what it does to your health. I'm not going to put myself out there and say what James says. Please read the book, but he believes it can reverse disease and all kinds of things that I found deeply interesting, but I'm not putting my name to as such. So, do your own research.
Well, I think that maybe leads to another point, which is, what is our natural state? Many of us reach for alcohol or drugs or social media scrolling or gossiping or work addiction, but often we're escaping something. And I think our natural state is a state, you described it like Bradley Cooper in Limitless. Our state is a natural state of joy and peace and vitality. There's a story hundreds and hundreds of years ago. There was this golden idol that the people in this village used to get up every morning and they'd worship. It was this incredible monument that was made of gold. And then it became clear foreign invaders were going to come into the country. So the inhabitants of this little village that cherished their idol said, we need to hatch a plan. And one of them said, why don't we just cover it with layer upon layer upon layer of mud? And they go, good idea. And so they covered it with layer and layer and layer and layer of mud until it became this small mountain of mud. Sure enough, the invaders came in and all they saw was soil, and they kept on walking, and they left the country eventually. Many decades later, there was a little kid, because adults are nothing more than deteriorated children. Picasso said it well. It took me 4 years to paint like Raphael. It took me a lifetime to remember how to paint like a child. Children breathe deeply, and children are in a natural state of who we are. And so this little child started moving away the soil. And as he moved away some soil, he saw gold. Moved away more layers, more gold. Got his buddies together. They started moving. Layer upon layer of soil revealed more and more of the gold. And I think that's a metaphor for personal development and inner work, and so much of what we've talked about, including exercise and consistency and discipline. But we are born into that gold. Our natural state is vitality. Our natural state is curiosity. Our natural state is breathing deeply. Our natural state is love. Our natural state is believing in being limitless and doing the things. We are taught to play small by the world around us. And so maybe rather than transformation, the goal is self-remembering. Moving through the layers of doubt, fear, and disbelief that we've accumulated by a hard world, and getting back more and more to who we truly are. And I think, and I call the concept the integrity gap. The greater the gap between your heroic self, which is who you're meant to be, and your egoic or social self, the less your life is going to work. And so using these methodologies, whether it's MVP, the 5-question morning maximizer, the 5 a.m. club, what I share in the new audio program, the Deep Magic of Daily Consistency, which is a complete system on how to be world-class consistent in whatever you want. The whole goal is to close that gap day by day steadily until we are not our social selves, but we're our truest selves.
What is it that you say about adults playing?
The human brain craves novelty. And we are most alive when we're exploring new things. I think human beings are meant to be pirates. We're meant to be nomads. And so, yes, we all have responsibilities and we need to be serious. But I'd also say, perspective is a powerful word. And no matter how long you get to live, life is a really short ride. And I think a lot of us as adults, we fall into the trap of living each day in the safe harbor of the known versus going out into the blue ocean of possibility. And I think it's really important every week to maybe have a play day. I think it's really important to have one day a week for 24 hours of digital fasting where we are away from our digital devices so we can live. I mean, hundreds of years ago, we had the Sabbath. That was a day of rest, a day of family, a day of reading, a day of walking in the woods. And it really is important, I believe, not to lose that childlike sense of wonder. And that involves taking risks. And I think risk has a bad reputation in society, but just taking risks, maybe it's moving to a new country. Maybe it's a risk of talking to a stranger on a train. Maybe it's a risk of learning a new language. Maybe it's a risk of saying, I'm going to launch an app company. Maybe it's a risk of saying on Thursday nights, I'm going to go do ballet or improv. But I think when we inject more risk into our days and we're willing to fail and understanding that failure is the price of ambition, and at the end of our lives, our greatest regrets are not the risk we took, but the risks we didn't take, then I think we start to live with that childlike sense of, and even being a child is about being loving.
Mm.
Oh, how much we miss out on in life because we're afraid of being rejected.
I think rejection and fear are just such interesting things that people are obsessed with. It's, people live their own lives and have their own, concerns and problems. Whether your business fails or your marriage breaks down or whatever, will have little to no impact on anybody else, really.
One thing I try to do is the thought exercise. 100 years from now, everyone, biohacking aside, 100 years from now, everyone we're trying to please will all be dust.
Mm.
So second thing I would say is an opinion is just an opinion. Who cares? Third thing I'd say is life is not a popularity contest. I think we do have a neurobiological instinct to be liked by the crowd, and that kept us alive when we were on the savannah. But I think, Oscar Wilde said it so well, there will never be a better you than you. I think it's so important to stay in your lane and run your own race and live life on your own terms. And if people laugh at you or they don't understand you, who cares?
It's just it's a funny thing. I think it's in all of us to wonder what people think, but it's almost a skill to understand that it doesn't matter.
I think we also, it's easy for all of us to forget that I believe adversity comes not for our failure, but for our fortune. And what I mean by that is when in my life, when I've gone through a difficult time, I go, oh, I wish it didn't happen to me. It's that great idea. A bad day for the ego is a great day for the soul. So our ego says, oh, I failed. Boo-hoo. Why did it happen to me? And we make it into something negative. But what if the very things that we see as failure is actually fuel for our growth and leading us to a better place? We're here in London. And I remember one day I was walking by London Eye along the River Thames, and there was a busker, and I just, his music was absolutely incredible. So I actually sat down and I listened to this busker singing, and it was just enchanting. It was just a wonderful day. And after he finished one song, I said, that was an amazing song. And he goes, yeah, that was, I wrote that song because of my failed relationship. It really devastated me. And I go, well, why are you calling it a failed relationship? Because if you didn't have that relationship, you wouldn't be able to create this kind of music. And so all I'm suggesting is the very things that break us are the very things that can make us stronger and wiser and faster. It's Nietzsche said it well, chaos gives birth to dancing stars. So what the world might think is a failure, and they might, haters or trolls might laugh at you, who cares, right? You're living your life, and the very things that often people say are failures are the very things we needed to become who we're meant to be and live a better life.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you want to hear more incredible conversations with extraordinary people to help unlock the potential within all of us, then please subscribe, follow, and review the show wherever you're listening or watching. Thanks again, and we'll catch you next week right here on Untapped.